Hi class, welcome to week 5's guidance. This week we'll take a look at big data and see what that's all about. I hope you enjoy this presentation. The objectives of this presentation are that we will define what big data is, we'll take a look at some advantages, some challenges, how analytics or the gathering and use of educational information all rolls into big data, and we'll take a look at some questions to consider. First of all, let's go ahead and define what big data is. These are all the data sets that we generate from our habits, our needs, and our choices. Things like the cars that we buy, the food that we eat, the clothes that we buy and wear, the decisions that we make for how to raise our children, medical bills, phone bills, real estate, the jobs that we take, that we move through in life. Those all generate lots and lots of data. One person generates an enormous amount of data. From all those activities that we talked about earlier and the hundreds of other activities that we do, all roll into, all define ourselves by the data or the information that we leave behind. And if you take that number and multiply it by 7 billion people on this planet, you'll realize that it's just an astronomical amount of information that we're faced with. That defines big data. And right now, the amount of data that we're generating is two mathematical levels above terabytes as far as big numbers go. That's a lot of data. Please follow the instructions on the screen. Take a look at this video. That's on YouTube. And then we'll see you back in this presentation when you're done watching that short video. To further define big data, let's take a look at how our educational choices roll into this whole thing called big data. We leave breadcrumbs as we go through life as far as what our favorite subjects are in school, whether we study at night, during the day, weekends. This is all information that is available, that is being gathered about us by us and by administrators and system administrators, etc. Do you homeschool your kids, or do you send them to public schools or private schools? Are you a lifelong learner? Myself, I'm a lifelong learner just like the rest of you are. And if I went to all the schools that I attended and asked for all those transcripts, it would probably cost me close to $100 in fees because I've attended about 8 or 9 schools post-secondary, post-high school. So that's a lot of information and a lot of transcripts. You know, how were your high school grades like? And how did they follow as you decided to attend either on-ground or online courses? All of this information is rolled up in the picture of you. What are some advantages to big data, to all this information that we have? If you walk through London, you'll see at almost every intersection video cameras that are used by police and detectives to fight crime. Supermarkets predict our buying habits by what we choose to buy. And here's an interesting thing about medical history. There's a company called Road ID, and they're on roadid.com. And this is actually my ankle bracelet that they made, that I purchased, that has my name and some contact information. And when I go cycling or when I go running, I wear this bracelet. So if something happens and I'm in an emergency, the emergency medical techs, the EMTs, will be able to call my brother and say, hey, your bro's in trouble. But the reason why I bring this up is that you can also have an enhanced service from Road ID, and you can upload your medical data for a monthly service fee, so that if I am in a crash, then the EMTs will be able to scan the back of this little engraved piece that you see, where this yellow arrow is, and they'll be able to take a look at all my medical history and react appropriately to get me out of that medical situation. I chose not to have that service because I don't want all my medical data out there, especially if like I lose this bracelet. Always know where your kids are. Some people choose to embed chips in their kids, almost like a finder, just like the OnStar service for vehicles. And everybody knows about the cookies that websites place on our hard drives to track what we do, or to track our purchasing habits. Now, what are some of the challenges with big data? Who is going to manage all this information? Is it going to be done privately, by the government? Is somebody going to stand in and implement this huge initiative as far as what we do with all this information? And who owns this data? Do we own it ourselves? Interestingly enough, it's really hard for me sometimes to get my medical information, to get my medical records from the doctors that I go to. And I'm the patient, and I can't even see my own records sometimes. They make it really hard for us to see that, which is kind of crazy. Data privacy. This is huge right now with identity theft. How can we devise ways to keep this data secure so that it's only used for good, positive purposes? And what are some other challenges with these massive amounts of data? There's a lot of challenges out there, and you should have come across some of those in this week's reading. Now, how does this all pertain to education and what we call analytics, or the collection of all of this information and the use of it? And by the way, this is the most important slide of this presentation. Let's talk about personalized learning. Learning analytics are used to collect and examine the records of student interactions with various computer systems and to look for correlations between those activities and the learning outcomes. And that is so that we can provide, we meaning schools, educational institutions, we can provide personalized learning, customized instruction based on what you've done previously in school, what your interests are, what your job experiences are. And this is all information, that electronic trail of breadcrumbs that we talked about earlier, by the choices that we make. See what learning does electronically. See what it looks like electronically. And I'm not talking about just going from textbooks to ebooks, but actually having links and tracks to see exactly how we're applying what we learn. What do all these classes that you're taking and you're getting ready to graduate, let's see what that looks like on electrons, not only how you apply this information, but what it looks like on a record as you progress through the educational system, and you strive for career progression and enhancement and all of that. It's basically the digital footprint, what we call, of cognitive development. In other words, how is technology enhancing your life or affecting your life? Does it help us make smarter decisions? With every class that you've taken in the MALT program, your cognitive development should have expanded in, of course, varying degrees, because we all learn differently, and that does leave a digital footprint. So that's part of the information, the educational information of this whole analytics ball of wax, if you want to call it that. And if you think back to EDU697, Research, Design, and Methodology, one of my favorite classes, by the way, we'll remember that the larger the sample, the more that studies are reliable, the more consistent they are. It's the N sample, N for Nancy, N equals what? And the more information that we have, that makes the studies stronger, the findings and the outcomes of these research studies. And that's how analytics can improve research. So here are some questions to consider. How in the world are we going to wrap our arms around all this data? that is the question that, as you've seen from this week's resources, or you will as you read them and watch the videos and read the information, you'll see that there's a lot of big guns out there, a lot of really smart people that are trying to figure this out. This is like a riddle like a code that needs to be cracked. What are we going to do with all of this data, and how are we going to manage it, like we talked about earlier? And as far as more questions to consider with big data, let's try to see if we can generate some of those questions from you in your DQ responses this week. Use your critical thinking skills and think of some ways that we can use this big data to our advantage and for our children's advantage as well. Let's go ahead and wrap this presentation up. First, we defined big data. We looked at some advantages and some challenges. And then we discussed analytics briefly. And then we saw some questions to consider. And final note before we look at the references page, all the images in this presentation are royalty free. They came from either PowerPoint, Microsoft PowerPoint, or www.morgfile.com. I know the name sounds a little bit macabre, but that's a great website for royalty-free pictures that you can use. And what's really cool about these is that not only are they free money-wise, but they don't need to be cited or attributed. And as we can see at the red arrow here, Morgfile says that the photos that I chose and that are out there for you as well do not need to be attributed, which means that they don't need to be cited. But you can use them, you can copy them and distribute them, etc. So that's really cool that not only do we not have to pay for them, but we don't have to write up a citation, which makes this presentation that much cleaner, and it's less work for us. So check that website out. And here are the references that were used for this presentation. And thanks for watching. And good luck this week. Have fun. You only have 2 more weeks until you're done with this capstone and you've got your degree. So congratulations. Keep on working hard.